Welcome back, Galaxy. It's time for the October 2025 development update. While it did turn on the Galactic Moon Festival seasonal event, as it usually does, it's also introduced a lot of new things this year, along with the patch. We're going to read over it together like usual. However, I'm not going to go over everything as it is quite sizable. I'm just going to hit the key points of what's new and what's returning this year and what may be different than last year. Like I already mentioned, the Galactic Moon Festival is back. Go watch my video from the previous year if you want to see what all of the normal activities are, but let's talk about what's new this year. So first of all, the Dead Tree Ghost Raid is back and it's offering 4 new paintings. Spooky paintings 25, 26, 27, and 28 are available and can be obtained from the event. My favorite one this year is painting 27, as we like big reptiles here. Let me know what your favorite is in the comments. The Galactic Moon Festival badge and tile have been updated. This year it is called Galactic Quipster. You can purchase them from Zosferatu for 900 tokens like usual. The new rewards this year on offer are the Size Noodles figurine, as well as the Prop Backlight Glow Stick. Here is an example of it in one of my structures. It is a nice, cool purple color. On Vernai Island, you will find that the Essence of the Moon Festival painting is back on offer again for the duration of the event for 8 gratification tokens. And the Undead Chubafly has returned and brought a friend this year, the Moon-Cursed Walk of Doom. This friend works the same, appearing at the top of the hour for 15 minutes somewhere in the trick-or-treat areas. Trick-or-treating with the NPC successfully will give you a reward item to complete a 5-item collection, which rewards you a unique holo pet. So good luck tracking down the Walk of Doom while trick-or-treating. Next up, the Undead Heroics are back, also known as the Galactic Moon Festival versions, or the Spooky Heroics. So these include Tuscan Army, Aquamin Undead Star Destroyer, or Lost Star Destroyer as it's usually known as, and a new one this year is Exar, which we'll be covering at the end of the video as there's a lot to go over with that one. Some changes that come along with these heroics are the entrances to the areas are a bit more dangerous, specifically Aquamin's Cave, so the Night Sister Stronghold Cave, has undead enemies in it, making the rundown a little bit tougher, and the dig site at the Exar Temple now has undead enemies wandering around, so be careful going up to click on the entry brazier. As a similar note, undead non-boss enemies in Aquamin and Lost Star Destroyer have actually been made tougher this year. Apparently last year their undead profiles weren't tuned to the degree that the devs were happy with, so expect those enemies to be hitting a little bit harder and likely taking a little bit longer to kill. The Galactic Moon Festival themed loot rewards are now included in the reward boxes themselves for the duration of the seasonal event. On this topic, I did update the reward box wiki page and added a section for the Galactic Moon Festival only rewards. If you're able to, please help update these tables as you get these items from these boxes. The link to that is in the description. Moving on, let's go over some other changes that have been implemented with this patch. First of all, player houses. The big update here is more housing storage can be purchased at the Lucky Despot. Storage can now be increased by another 1,200 items. These upgrades are divided across 12 individual items, costing 65 million credits each. So if you want to buy all 12 of these, it will cost you 780 million credits. Battlefields and Flashpoints have seen some updates, namely all battlefields are now multi-factional, meaning that you can play on any map. You're not restricted to the 2 or 3 that people were playing on before if you were doing multi-faction. And some no-build zones near Flashpoint areas were updated, which allowed the devs to re-add the Mount Flashpoint on Rory. We're going to skip down to this combat section here. I recommend going back and reading those other bullet points if you're interested. But these two are very important, namely that NPC armor protection now takes elemental effects into account. I asked one of the Legends devs, what does this mean? Effectively, elemental armor wasn't correctly being applied to NPCs, meaning that they basically only had kinetic and energy armor, in a sense. So any elemental damage that you're dealing to NPCs now should be lower than what you were experiencing previous to this patch. This is a pretty big deal, especially for enemies with high armor values, like the Undead, who can have up to about 12,000 points of armor. So things like strike through and armor reductions are going to be a bit more important for doing damage to those quickly. And probably to some people's loss, the commando kill meters now properly check that you have enough kill meter points before firing an ability. For those who didn't know, some kill meter abilities like Killing Spree and First Aid were allowed to be used if you didn't actually have 20 or 10 kill meter points. This has been fixed, so sorry, no more free DPS or extra heals for commandos. Moving on to items, the genders and species terminals in the Moth, Entha, Theed, and Coronet hospitals are updated. They now display the period of time a player has before they can change their gender and species again. So I believe if you just go up to the terminal, examine it, it'll tell you how long you have to wait for that character to change. This is a really nice quality of life fix as the period of time is quite long, so most people would lose track of it even if they wrote down the day and time. And as discussed in the dev diary, the Sacred Jedi text pages now can be read, so that's fun. 2 Senate proposals have been implemented with this update, specifically the Pistolier Senate proposal, which affects bounty hunters, and we'll talk about that more later, and the Chronicler Emote Senate proposal has been implemented. The Chronicler Emote Senate proposal is basically a Chronicler ventriloquism for Chronicler Masters, except now for emotes. So you can basically program storyteller NPCs to emote now, on top of also having them say dialogue. Before we talk about Bounty Hunter, let's jump over to Space. There are a lot of good bug fixes here that allow you to read, but the main things I want to point out is that duty token rewards from destroy duty missions are now restricted to 1 character per account. So this means that if you were doing destroy duty missions with an alternate character, either standing around like in your Lambda, or sitting in an empty gunner seat in like your crate, they'll no longer get extra tokens. Similarly, if you just drag them around on other ships, they won't get other tokens. This is going to reduce income for players who are using multiple characters to earn duty mission tokens quickly. So this should help maybe bump up the price of the average duty mission token. We'll see how people respond to this one. Next, I want to point out that the Y-Wing and Y-Wing Long Probe have had their stats adjusted. Their speed stats have been adjusted from 0.9 to 0.93, and maybe more importantly, their hitboxes now more closely match their ship chassis. Here are the top and front views of what their hitboxes now look like. Basically, they conform to the shape of the ship chassis better now. Lastly, I want to point out that the TIE Advance has had its hit sphere adjusted to better match other interceptor ships, so that's nice, helps with some consistency there. And there are a ton of other miscellaneous bug fixes, which I also recommend you all go check out and read. Now, we still have a lot to cover though, so let's move back to Bounty Hunter. The biggest change for Bounty Hunter here is that the Bounty Specialization Expertise tree has 2 new boxes added to it, specifically Spray Shot and Advanced Spray Shot. Spray Shot is a new attack that can only be used with a pistol. The damage it currently deals is around 4,072 acid damage, but that's including the 5% bonus from the Expertise tree. If you take out that bonus, it's dealing about 3,600 plus weapon contribution from the pistol. Again, that's without pistol damage from the tree, but you can't skip that box to get the ability, so that number's not super important. With the damage increase, after that, with Advanced Spray Shot, the 15% is adding up to about 4,654 acid damage per attack. Pistol damage exotics does increase the damage of this ability. And as a side note, the elemental armor penetration acid exotic doesn't appear to affect this ability from my testing. If you find out otherwise, let me know in the comments. The action cost for this ability is 1,657 action points, so very costly. This is all to say, though, that before we cover the rest of the stats, that Spray Shot has changed since it was originally introduced on the Friday patch. The footage you've been seeing and are seeing currently is from previous to these changes. I decided to keep the older footage here so people can compare the original version to whatever the current version may be when you're watching this. So the current range on the ability is 35 meters. This is down from the original 46 meter range. And the width of the cone on this effect is 25 degrees wide. Again, both these stats might change. Its current cooldown is 7 seconds. This is up from its original 6-second cooldown. And lastly, every attack of this ability adds a stacking debuff that reduces the target's cold, heat, electricity, and acid protection armor by 500 per stack. It can stack up to 5 times for a total of minus 2,500 elemental armor. This is down from the original 765 per stack for a total of 3,825 reduction to elemental protection. Again, this might change by the time you see this video. I've updated the Legends Bounty Hunter wiki page with the ability and its effects, so make sure to go read that for any updates, as that will be much more current than this video will likely be. Some notes about the ability, though, is that you can swap between weapons while using it, and the debuff will stay up. So if you throw 5 points into the carbine and pistol line to pick this up, you can obviously just use a carbine, run carbine stats, then switch over to your pistol to fire Spray Shot, switch back to your carbine and keep attacking, or if you're using a rifle or melee weapon, same thing. The debuff can't be boost off a player. It works just like Armor Break, except it's specific to elemental armor. Let's go over some of my initial thoughts. For context, I haven't played Bounty Hunter since live, meaning I haven't played it at all on Legends, so take this all with a grain of salt. At the time of recording this video, the extra AoE damage Spray Shot has likely won't make up for the lower damage a Bounty Hunter will be doing using pistols in PvE. Most Bounty Hunter abilities have low fixed damage and rely on weapon contribution to put up good numbers. Pistols produce the lowest weapon contribution out of any weapon type in the game, making them a naturally poor match for Bounty Hunters. Spray Shot, though, will still likely be a boon to other members in your group, especially with the elemental armor protection fix on NPCs. Commandos especially, who get a lot of damage out of elemental attacks, will be happy to have a pistol Bounty Hunter around, but this won't make your Bounty Hunter look better in the combat logs, so you're still not going to be putting up strong numbers yourself. It's hard to attribute just how much your Spray Shot is really adding to anyone else's damage, though, since each profession does a varying amounts of elemental damage. You also have situations where, for example, Dark Side Jedi are ignoring armor anyways with their lightning attacks, so Spray Shot really doesn't matter to them. In terms of PvP, I could see this being situationally useful. The AoE obviously helps add pressure to groups of enemies, and it's a very important aspect of PvP. The debuff will make your allies do considerably more damage to players, especially those who devalue their elemental armor protection, which is pretty common in the game's current meta. However, the change from 46 meters to 35 meters makes it pretty terrible for large fights. For comparison, this is the same range that Burn has, so if you're used to playing Bounty Hunter in big fights, just think about how often you're actually able to get off Burn in a fight. That's how often you're basically going to be able to get out Spray Shot. Again, for another comparison, the range on Spray Shot is shorter than similar kind of effects like Smuggler's Fan Shot and Suppressing Fire, which those two abilities have a base 46 meters, plus they get the 3 meter bonus from the Underworld Smuggling, so they actually have a 49 meter range. And even then, 49 meters is short for PvP when most of the fights are taking place at 55 meters or greater. In short, though, I could see this being pretty useful for battlefields and small encounters, where it's easier to coordinate your team's placement and force fights into shorter range or more constrained situations. But for the typical large Restus or even some Flashpoint fights, it's going to be pretty hard to get this ability off. Player bounty hunting, you probably won't see this used often, if at all, especially after the changes that have been implemented. Spray Shot has twice the action cost of Burn, making it cost prohibitive in 1v1s. However, I do want to note that this design was intentional, as the ability was intended to primarily boost bounty hunters in PvE content, not necessarily give them a wider toolkit for bounty hunting. Overall, though, I like the concept of the ability and staff's interest in furthering bounty hunters' role in PvE, but Bounty Hunter really needs more than this to make up for the current gaps it has. Pistol Bounty Hunter is effectively a niche support role now for PvE, which is an upgrade from just not being a thing before. To be a viable damage alternative to carbines, rifles, melee weapons, Pistol Bounty Hunter needs further damage bonuses or another frequently used ability to make up for its low weapon contribution. If you want to read the original Senate proposal, I've included a link to it in the description. Alright, with all the patch notes covered and Bounty Hunter discussed, let's finally talk about the new Galactic Moon Festival heroic, Exar. As mentioned earlier, Exar is the fourth heroic to receive its Galactic Moon Festival variant. The instance has a new look, new seasonal loot, and tougher undead versions of the original NPCs. Unlike previous Galactic Moon Festival heroics, though, Exar has seen some changes to its encounter mechanics. First, let's go over what's different, and then talk about strategies players are using to complete the instance. For the Open Hand of Hate, the boss will reflect damage to more group members than normal. Specifically, the Static Cling debuff will be placed on more players at once. Additionally, it seems like more lightning balls will appear around the arena, I think. Minder of Weak Wills is the same. The enemies just hit harder and are tougher to kill. The Caretaker of Lost Souls has probably seen the most changes and is typically the first real wall groups will encounter when doing this spooky heroic. First, the Caretaker of Lost Souls is completely immune while the 4 Caretaker Protectors are alive. There is no point to attack the boss before taking out the Protectors. Second, 6 NPCs will spawn simultaneously to attack the group. 3 at each of the doors, consisting of 2 Calming Influences, 2 Painbringers, and 2 Tomb Guardians. This is up from the normal 3 NPCs that spawn. Third, the Executioner moves significantly faster towards the prisoner. Fourth, the green gas area of effect that emanates from the boss once the Protectors are dead has a new visual effect. Unattackable Tomb Guardians will shamble towards randomly selected players. The effect is the same, but it better illustrates how the gas chases players around the arena. Fifth and finally, the Blackwing Panthers positioned around the room will become active one at a time once the 4 protectors are dead. These creatures have a variety of specials, including Kick, making them dangerous if left alone. The Clenched Fist of Hate will place fire on more players than usual, or at least a little bit more frequently. Fire dropped on the ground by one player seems to have the ability to damage other players now. This is different from the non-spooky Fist of Hate, where the fire you drop only damages your own character. The fire seems to do more damage than usual, or the fire vulnerability debuff players receive seems harsher. For the last fight, the 4 horsemen are exactly the same. The Word Bearer phase, though, drops significantly more lightning bolts than usual, I think. The main difference with Word Bearer, though, is that the Caretaker gas now appears in this arena as well. Instead of the gas appearing from the center, though, it now appears in the 4 corners of the room. This gas and lightning ball mechanic continues into the Exar fight itself. Exar himself hits significantly harder, having an ability that deals 25,000 electricity damage before armor. The Masashi sword can be dangerous, but doesn't seem as scary as Exar. Exar also learned how to use Saber Reflect. It works the same as it does for Senya. Now that we've talked about the differences, let's talk about strategies. For context, at the time of recording this video, I've attempted this heroic 5 times and have cleared it 2 of those times. The first time I went in blind to the changes on my commando and the group didn't get past the Caretaker. Second was on my medic and the group ran out of time on Exar. The third and fourth were on my Jedi where no one died and we completed the instance in 30 minutes or less both times. My fifth and most recent attempt was again on my commando, where we had trouble surviving on Caretaker, so I switched to my medic for double healing, which seemed to work out, except the run ended on the Exar fight, as we only had time for 1 attempt before people's bedtimes kicked in. The main trend I've been seeing attempting spooky EK so far is that people need to see the Caretaker and Exar fight a few times before they get the hang of the timing and what their role needs to do. My first, second, and fifth attempts were with players who were going in blind on 1 or more of the encounters. My third and fourth attempts were with players who have attempted or cleared the spooky heroic already. Let's get into the general recommendations before I get into the specific fight strategies. First, I recommend putting full kinetic, energy, and elemental armor protection in your entertainer buffs. Kinetic and elemental are the primary sources of damage throughout the entire instance, but the Word Bearer will do a ton of damage to the group in the last fight, and most of it is energy and elemental. The group will want a light side Jedi with a Guardian set to help control NPCs with Sweep 8. A spy with the usual group buffs and single target debuffs comes highly recommended. The high damage output is very important to completing some of the encounters, and spy adds a whole lot to the whole group. This is especially true since the undead enemies are just naturally tougher and have much higher armor and health values. 2 medics are being used by some groups, as I mentioned earlier. This can significantly improve your group's survivability at the cost of a generally slower run. Some groups can fail to meet damage checks running 2 medics, however. For example, the first group I blindly attempted Caretaker with tried 2 medics, but we lacked the damage to defeat Executioner before he got to the prisoner. Conversely, in my 5th group, we switched to 2 medics and the fight became much more manageable, albeit we missed killing the Executioner once, which led us to having to kill 5 Executioners instead of 4. Groups might want to consider bringing an off-tank, especially for managing Caretaker adds. A Bounty Hunter tank or a Durable Commando will do. Having a backup for the last fight of Exar is also nice, just in case one tank gets deleted by Exar's very powerful lightning attacks. For reference, here are the group compositions I cleared the instance with so far. My 3rd group used 2 light side Jedis, 1 in Guardian set and 1 in Duelist set, 1 medic, 1 officer with the GA set, 1 spy, and 3 commandos. My 4th group used the exact same composition, except we traded 1 commando for a smuggler. Let's get on to the specific fights. For the Open Hand of Hate, just use the normal slow strategy. This means killing the cultists 1 at a time as they slowly activate, and then using damage over time effects to slowly kill the boss, or just auto-attacking the boss and having people stop attacking if they have the static cling debuff. The Minder of Weak Wills, just same as usual, just stack the NPCs and AoE them down. The medic should be keeping in mind that they should be purging the NPCs, especially the Minder, who can get a buff that increases the healing that they receive. Caretaker of the Lost. This is going to be a long explanation, so hang with me here. The group should stack either on the Executioner or in a corner of the Executioner pass-through. Stacking in the center holds no benefit since you can't damage the boss, and damage on the Executioner is tighter now, so melee DPS need to get on him sooner. Once the Executioner is active, the damage dealer should prioritize attacking the Executioner. This includes if the other NPCs are active as well. Again, this timer is very strict. You need to take out the Executioner ASAP. When the players aren't busy attacking the executioner, they should try and help get attention of the NPCs that spawn in from the two doorways. This prevents the NPCs from all jumping on one player immediately. The light side Jedi should consider using Saber Intercept on the medic preemptively, as the NPCs will often go for the medic first due to the hate generated from healing. Commandos can pre-fire their heavy weapons on the NPC spawn points with manual aiming to try and grab the attention of the NPCs sooner. Once the players have the attention of the NPCs, they should stack all 6 of the NPCs closely. Once all 6 NPCs are stacked up within sweep range, the light side Jedi should use sweep 8 to get and hold their attention. The light side Jedi should also point the NPCs away from the group because these NPCs do have powerful cone of effects. These 6 NPCs spawn on a fixed timer, so their appearances are predictable. The first wave is a few moments after the fight begins. The second is shortly after the executioner becomes attackable for the first time. The third is shortly before the executioner becomes attackable for the second time. The fourth appears right when the third prisoner begins moving. The fifth appears when you're waiting for the fourth prisoner to start moving. You should be able to avoid a sixth wave, provided you defeat the last caretaker protector quickly. The executioner and other NPCs are vulnerable to stuns and roots, which allows you to buy time or stagger the incoming NPCs. Pistol Whip, a Pet's Kick, or Unhealthy Fixation are great to use on the executioner. False Hope and Crippling Vortex are handy for debuffing and rooting the 6 NPCs that spawn in. Once the protectors are defeated, players should begin attacking the caretaker while remaining on the outside of the combat arena. Melee damage dealers can run into the middle for a few moments to land some hits before backing out and switching to a ranged weapon. Players can manage the position of the gas by moving around the outside of the arena together and staying a little ahead of the undead Tomb Guardians. When the Blackwing Panthers become active, tanks and melee DPS can handle them. If your group is short on melee DPS, then any damage dealer can help out. Again, beware getting kicked by a Panther. If you're kicked at the wrong time, you could get stuck in the gas. Most, if not all, the debuffs and dots in this encounter can be cleansed from players. Medics should prioritize boosting debuffs off the tank and then themselves, as the debuffs typically increase the damage the target receives and makes the target easier to hit. Professions capable of curing themselves should be doing so. The gas will apply a debuff that looks like a brain and is the most dangerous debuff in this encounter, so prioritize cleansing that above all else. For the next fight, the Clench Fist of Hate, you can use the same exact strategy as normal. Just that when you walk off the fire, make sure it doesn't drop on other players. Time for Exar himself. First, the 4 Horsemen is exactly the same, there's no change in strategy here. For the Word Bearer, the most effective strategy seems to be stack in the middle at the start of the fight and hold there for a few moments while the gas closes in from the 4 corners. Once it gets a bit closer, move south towards the entry door, then in a clockwise diamond pattern around the room to control the gas. Medics should prioritize cleansing the tank of any debuffs or dots they receive from crossing puddles of gas. Once you defeat the Word Bearer, the gas from that phase will immediately stop spreading, but already spawned gas will linger for a few moments. The group should carefully stack in the middle again while avoiding leftover gas and repeat the same movement pattern as the Word Bearer phase. The light side Jedi should get Exar's attention as soon as possible as the boss hits extremely hard. Everyone should focus Exar and ignore the sword. The gas and lightning will stop once Exar is dead, and he's the one who rewards tokens and boxes anyway. Everyone should try to avoid being in front of Exar if possible, as he has some strong cone of effects. If you have the light side Jedi tanking the boss, lead people around the room, this should be easy to do, as the line will end up being the Jedi, Exar, and then everybody else. Medics should continue to prioritize cleansing the tank and themselves. If that brain debuff ends up on the tank or another player who has Exar's attention, they will basically instantly die. Players should watch out for a Saber Reflect from Exar. Medics can purge this effect like usual. And congratulations, that's Spooky Exar. If you got any of the cool spooky loot, make sure to let me know in the comments and update that wiki page. Now, finally, time for my review of the new spooky instance. As an experienced player, I enjoy this version of the instance much more than the original. Historically boring encounters, namely Caretaker and Exar himself, are now exciting due to the new mechanics and threat of the undead. I do wish, though, that the fight against Open Hate had further mechanical changes. I don't like that the most effective strategy for this fight has most of the group standing around not doing anything. I wish that maybe the cultists activated faster or in greater numbers, or maybe more spawned in, something that increased their threat level and keep the rest of the group engaged while they wait out for all the NPCs to activate and die before getting on the boss. As someone who focuses their content, though, on making SWG Legends more accessible to new and returning players, I do think the difficulty of Spooky Exar may be a bit too high. Specifically, the Caretaker fight has 2 hard damage checks built into the first phase of the fight. The first and tightest one is killing the Executioner. The second is killing the 6 NPCs before more show up, which is a much more generous timer. Most undergeared players, though, especially those in less ideal group compositions, probably won't be able to finish this instance. This is problematic since Exar is a gearing requirement, especially for Jedi trying to get their 5th generation 2-hand lightsaber schematics or just their Master Cloak collection done. My recommendation would be to reduce the Executioner's speed back to normal to help alleviate this issue. I know there are ways to make this easier, but they're profession and expertise dependent. Stricter group compositions inherently make the instance less accessible. This wasn't a problem with previous Spookies since those encounters don't have tight damage checks. If the non-Galactic Moon Festival versions of the heroics are ever made available during Galactic Moon Festival alongside their Spooky versions, then I don't see the need to make any changes to this instance. Except maybe removing Saber Reflect from Exar. It isn't a problem, I'm just tired of seeing it after Songhill, Sinya, Melikai, and Old Man have shown me the same trick time and time again. I will say though that the presentation for this instance is awesome. The opening cutscene of the open hand performing an undead ritual is super cool. The red aesthetics and new decorative pieces look great. I don't know if this was intentional, but the lightning balls are way easier to see than the normal green versions. So I hope those lightning balls stick around, or maybe the green versions are made more visible. I really love seeing the Blackwing Panthers in the Caretaker fight. Legends has a lot of cool beasts and pets for Beastmasters that don't show up anywhere in the game, so seeing them as actual NPCs somewhere in the world is really cool. From what I've seen so far, the Galactic Moon Festival themed reward box items are super cool. There's a lot of great furniture. I've seen one weapon schematic so far, and I've heard rumors that there's a new house deed, but I haven't seen anything, so I'm going to leave that in the rumor category for now. Overall, this is really great work from staff. I'm looking forward to future heroics, instances, spooky or otherwise. Yeah, great work. Loved it. But that's the October 2025 development update, everybody. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. Leave a like if you like this kind of coverage, and don't forget to subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and stay hungry this Galactic Moon Festival galaxy.